So as you all probably already read by the title, in today's video guys, I will be ranking the helicopters as the top 12 best helicopters in War Tycoon, since War Tycoon has recently just gave us an update for the helicopters, and many people haven't really been making videos on the best helicopters in the game, so I guess I'm gonna be doing this today. So this list is actually going to be based on the meta of the game and how everything is going as of now, what's the best as of now, and what people are normally using. And I'll be ranking all of these helicopters in War Tycoon based on 3 different categories. This being their versatilities, how well they can transport stuff, how good they are in actual ground attacks, along with also how good they are in actual air-to-air. So let's actually just get on with the video. The first helicopter, which is going to be number 12 on this list, which by the way I will not be ranking by the DeLorean because it's just an Easter egg, nothing special to go through. I'll be keeping the Blackhawk as the number 12 position as the worst helicopter in the game. The reason why I say the Blackhawk is the worst helicopter in the game is because it doesn't really have anything going for it. First of all, it needs at least one player in order to actually be able to kill our people both in the ground and in the air. Second of all, it is unable to transport any oil barrels, and genuinely it's also not really good for ground attacks. Like, all we have here is just flares. I just don't feel like the Blackhawk has anything really going for it, so this is why I'm going to be ranking it for the number 12 spot. Next up, coming up at the 11th spot, I am going to be placing the Huey. And Huey, since it does not have flares, it doesn't actually matter this much. What matters about the Huey is that it actually has something going for it. It's actually going to be scoring a point in one of my categories for actually being somewhat semi-decent in actual ground attacks. Let's say that's just people, let's say in this place, we are able to actually shoot them with these barrage rockets, and then that's just a problem dealt with. Nothing else, nothing really going for it. It doesn't really have as good transport in terms of being able to carry oil barrels. However, it is also able to transport players and pretty much has exactly the same thing as a Blackhawk, as a side guns, but again, on this helicopter, you're actually not forced to have more than one player. So this is definitely gonna be a plus. Next up, what I have on the list over here is going to be the Lakota. It does not have any firepower, however, it is a starter helicopter, which does not require anybody to actually do anything. All that this helicopter is actually made for is to transport players, along with being able to transport stuff like the oil barrels. And it's actually pretty good and pretty efficient at transporting oil barrels, and that's why I'm going to be ranking it on the number 10. Alrighty, so taking the number 9 spot, we are going to be having the Super Stallion, and this is where the huge upgrade in terms of actual transport purposes starts to go up. This vehicle is able to transport 4 oil barrels and 4 crates, so it does have so much things that it can hold. It can also transport up to even 8 players. Along with this, it can tank up to almost 3 tank shells, by the way, and it's just really good for being able to transport people, but it's also incredibly tanky, and not to add, it also has flares, so you guys are actually semi-able to deal with stuff that's actually trying to attack you or just shoot you out of the air with the missiles. Like, the Super Stallion is definitely gonna get plus for me, but not to add, it also has some gunners, which by the way, these gunners can actually last a very long time, so if you do have teammates that have semi-decent aim and you can cooperate together really well, then this helicopter is definitely gonna be for you. Alrighty, so now actually moving into the number 8 category, and this is where stuff starts to get very controversial, but I'll be explaining why I make my picks. So, on the 8th spot, I am going to be placing the Alligator, and you might wonder why I say the Alligator is the worst after all of the attack or just overall helicopters with huge firepower. I'm gonna explain this to you guys first of all. Pretty much every single one of the other helicopters on this list does exceed in the category of air-to-air combat, but also ground attacks. Like, the Alligator is pretty good at basically being able to do ground attacks. It's also just as good as being able to deal with stuff air to air. However, it does have 2 big problems. First of all, it is incredibly big, making it very easy to shoot out of the sky by tanks, but also its size can make it very easy to also get killed by actual main cannons of the planes. So that's also a minus points. But one more thing I do want to admit about this helicopter is that another problem that it has is it does not have any types of lock-on missiles. So it is pretty versatile, but it just doesn't land a spot any higher than the number 8 category. However, one positive about it, as you guys can see, I was actually able to eject, which is, this is one of the only helicopters in the game which actually does have eject button. However, if you guys do love the Alligator, that's completely fine, but in terms of actual versatilities, I'm not ranking it any higher. Alrighty, so next up on the spot, I'm going to be ranking the Eurocopter, and you might wonder, what is the problem with Eurocopter this time? Well, I'm actually gonna go for its strengths. First of all, it does have a really good main cannon of being able to actually destroy bridges, or just being able to destroy anything, because it does have armor-piercing bullets. But along with this, it is also really good for air-to-air combat, because its bullets do have pretty good travel time. Not the best, but pretty good. But along with this, it does have 8 lock-on missiles, which you could use to destroy stuff in the sky. However, the problem with the Eurocopter, of course, it does actually lack with being able to transport more people. It lacks with not being able to take any oil barrels. It lacks with being actually good at ground combat and actually doing some ground attacks on our vehicles, because in order for you to actually be able to fight something like a tank or destroy a base, you do have to get very low, and that would just put you at such a big risk, because the only actual ground combat stuff that it has going for it is of course going to be its lock-on missiles, and that is just not self-sustaining enough. However, I am going to be giving it very big plus in terms of actually being good at air-to-air combat. However, at air-to-ground, it doesn't really get the job done. Along with this, it just doesn't have as much more versatilities going for it. So next up, I'm going to be ranking the Invictus slightly in front of the Eurocopter, and I'll be explaining you guys exactly why. So the Invictus does have the same strengths and weaknesses as the Eurocopter, however, it does have one very important thing going for it. It has a better main cannon in terms of being able to, first of all, deal with people on the ground such as infantry, because these bullets are actually going to be explosive, so of course it's easier to deal with stuff on the ground. Along with this, it's way better in terms of actual travel time, because its main cannon, just have a look at its travel time, it's just gonna be so much better for actually being able to deal with stuff like planes or even tanks. Because of its fast travel time, it's gonna be able to really nicely track where a tank is going on the ground. So this is the only reason why I'm gonna be ranking it a little bit higher than the Eurocopter. However, these guys are actually very similar to each other. Alright, so now moving into the top 5 category, which you all been waiting for in this video. Next up, I am going to be ranking the Apache. So now you might all be wondering why I'm ranking the Apache so freaking high on this list, unlike the other helicopters before. Well, this helicopter is just an all-rounder, very versatile helicopter. So let me explain to you guys why. It's incredibly good in terms of actually being able to deal with stuff on the ground, in terms of ground attacks on players, both tanks, or even just destroying shields and etc. But also, along with this, its explosive gun now makes it reasonably way better at actually being able to have some kind of fights with stuff in the sky, because of the travel time of the gun. But also, this explosive gun is very good. Along with this, it has exactly 8 lock-on missiles, which are both for air and the sky, so it's actually gonna be just as useful for actually being able to have some kind of fights in the sky. So it's an all-rounder, very good. But also, one more thing in which I do want to add is that it has a gunner, so you guys are actually able to play this with a friend. So you guys, basically, if you do coordinate good enough, then you could actually play together with this helicopter and really do score some good points on players. Alrighty, so the number 4 position is going to be the Little Bird, and it has actually received a nerf previously. However, the Little Bird has two very important things going for it, which most of the helicopters in this game do not. First of all, its size is so incredibly small that it can be literally so far away from you and you will not be able to do anything. Or even if it's close to you, it's still this small that it's just so hard to actually shoot it down, and you literally gotta use anti-air in order to shoot this thing down. Along with this, the Little Bird does have insanely good travel time for its gun. Along with this, it's also able to perform some very good strategies because of its speed in terms of being able to fight stuff in the air, so it also exceeds really well at air-to-air combat. But also, not to add, we have to consider the fact that it's also incredibly good for ground combat, because it's really good to deal with stuff on the ground because of its 14 rockets which it's armed with, which, by the way, these rockets have the highest area damage in the whole entire game. Okay, so now coming up on the number 3 position on this list, I am going to be ranking the Mi-24 Hind. This thing, back in the day, it used to be just an absolute beast, and it used to destroy absolutely everybody. But ever since the tank updates, and when we have received more anti-air and just things that are genuinely much better than the Hind have been added to the game, this helicopter has slightly fallen off. However, it does still rank very high up in terms of the most powerful helicopters in the game. So let's actually go through it. First of all, it is able to transport oil barrels, which is just a definitive plus. Next up, it's incredibly good in terms of being able to attack bases and being able to destroy stuff on the ground. Its firepower is just absolutely insane, man. Like, these explosive guns are the most powerful guns that War Tycoon has ever added to the game, and this helicopter literally had to have many nerfs. But not to add, it also does exceed pretty damn decently in terms of actual air-to-air combat, since it does have 4 lock-on missiles, which are universal, but along with this, it is also pretty good at being able to lock at people from very long distances. But the main problem with this helicopter is actually its size and how easy it is to shoot out of the sky, and really there are just so much better helicopters in terms of air-to-air. However, this comparison, of course, it is actually ranked at the versatilities and all of these 3 categories which I just listed, such as air-to-air, ground attacks, and of course versatility such as being able to transform many players, but also oil barrels. Okay, so now coming up as the second best helicopter in the game, I've already made this video. This helicopter is just incredibly underrated, and I'll have to explain it to you guys again. I have went through this multiple times, and many people have actually said that this helicopter is really good, but some have been disappointed. Alright, the Viper is the second best helicopter in the game because it has exactly the same versatilities as the Hind. However, not to add with this, it's also much smaller, making it a much harder target to also hit, but along with this, it does have better travel time in terms of being able to destroy stuff that's on the ground, and also it's just as good at being able to destroy stuff in the air. So its main strength, which I definitely have to say, is the overall versatility. First of all, it's good for actually being able to destroy stuff on the ground because of the rockets. Along with this, it's also just as good for being able to destroy tanks because of the armor-piercing bullets, but also its 2 missiles are actually incredibly powerful, and I have actually went through this. 4 of these missiles will overall be able to destroy a literal tank. Like, these missiles are no joke, and they are absolutely powerful. This is pretty much just a little bird, but with much more firepower, and I'm gonna say, I definitely like this. Alrighty, so now no surprise, on the number 1 spot, we are going to be ranking the Mi-28 Havoc. I gotta say, this thing is no joke, you guys. This thing basically meets every single category. It has insane health, insane firepower, but also the biggest versatilities in the game, because this helicopter is good for literally everything. First of all, its air-to-air missiles have the highest lock-on range in the whole entire game. Second of all, this helicopter easily deals with stuff that is on the ground because it has specific missiles which are basically able to deal with tanks and any ground vehicles. Basically, 8 of these missiles pretty much shred any vehicle on the ground. Along with this, it's also really good for being able to destroy stuff on the ground, such as players, and it's good for anti-infantry, but also it's great for shredding shields because of its main gun. But also, this main gun does not follow far away because it's actually incredibly powerful in terms of being able to destroy stuff like bridges, but also it does have pretty good travel time for air-to-air combat as well. But anyways, that is all I'm going to be having for you guys in today's video. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this list. This list is actually not really based on my personal opinions. It's more based on meta and the polls I've been having with many people. And I do gotta admit that many people who do play meta War Tycoon and people who do just play War Tycoon very sweaty, they do also agree with this list. So also let me know what you think and tell me what other vehicles I should be rating in the next video. Anyway, I'll see you guys next video. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy all the helicopters.